And we had seen what looked like a red orb right between this older gentleman and a member of our team, and then it was me. And I said, take a picture here, and he did. And here's this person that we had heard walking around behind us without seeing it with the naked eye, but it captured this person. So it's, you know, I've been doing this since I was 18, so now I'm 69, so for 51 years. And what I find interesting about retail ufology, it's always, I was abducted and I was raped and I was tortured and I was this. I'm going, yeah, that's the CIA. Oh, you mentioned the Greys. I know who manufactures those.
You know who manufactures the gray aliens?
Yes, they're not aliens.
Well, the gray beings that like Willie Strieber talks about.
Yeah, the fake ones, as they're called. So
how do they get them to abduct people? Like, there's all these stories that John Mack has talked about. He's interviewed some people.
I knew John very well.
Yeah, and then he talked to, I think, hundreds of people that explained being abducted by the little Greys and taken up into ships and had sperm and eggs extracted from them.
Yeah, as if.
How do you explain that?
Talk about delusions of grandeur, like they need our sperm and eggs.
Have you heard the theory that the future human theory, like if there was a cataclysmic event in the future, like way in the future, and they had to come back in time to get our DNA to repropagate humanity in the future, that's a hypothesis I've seen.
Yeah, I call it the cosmic Noah's Ark.
Yeah, right, yes.
Yeah. No, but I mean, there's a mixture of things. So here, remember this.
Okay.
October 1954, we mastered gravity control.
Who mastered it?
The covert programs in the United States aerospace.
But there was a couple people working on it. There was Lewis Whitten, and
no, I'm talking about if you take T. Townsend Brown's work.
Okay, T. Townsend Brown. Okay.
And the Beefhill Brown effect, all that started in the 20s. And if you look at a film that we released a couple years ago called The Lost Century, it kind of unpacks all this. It's a documentary.
Okay.
And people should look at that. You know, it explains all this and this trajectory of how this evolved. And so there were experiments with very high voltage systems that called an electrogravitic effect, where things would lift, right? And that was in the 20s. That was 28, 29. It was replicated in Germany in the Kautsky-Frost experiment. We have a physics journal. We show that in the film.
Okay.
It's in here for the briefing.
Okay.
Now, imagine those early experiments with so-called anti-gravity.
Okay.
Not a good term, but it was used a pop culture term. It's actually electrogravitics and electrogravitic field propulsion, but it's not a physics class.
Okay.
So what happened is that that research combined with a augmentation of that research, a big leap forward by studying the extraterrestrial vehicles that we downed in the mid-40s and 50s.
Right.
So by the time those two streams combined into a mighty river of research, but it was covert. As I was referring to that Wilbur Smith document, it's the most secret, and he said this is the most secret operation in the United States, exceeding the secrecy of the hydrogen bomb research. Now, this is 1950, before we detonated the first hydrogen bomb. So imagine something more classified and secret than the H-bomb, the ultimate doomsday weapon. That's this stuff. So, my uncle had his whole career at Northrop Grumman. He worked on the lunar module that landed on the moon. But those big aerospace companies, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Skunk Works, and now Raytheon, EG&G, way back then, and others, they got the portfolio for their special projects to study this material, figure out how it worked, and then apply it.
Yeah.
So by 1954, we had operational gravity control, so that we were building our own UFOs. And I always tell people, if you see something you call a UFO or a UAP, you have to ask yourself, it could be one of three things. It could be an extraterrestrial vehicle, or NHI craft, it's the pop culture now. It can be a man-made one coming out of one of these big aerospace companies, because they've been zipping around since the late 50s.
Right.
Or it could be neither of them, and it could be some extra-dimensional entity, something from another dimension that's not extraterrestrial.
So this is
where it gets confusing for people, and it's deliberately been commingled. In other words, disinformation specialists from the CIA and other places, like Lou Elizondo, he
called you a terrorist.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny. I'm a terrorist for speaking the truth. Well, that's Yeah, I mean, you know, as opposed to people who are actually trying to create Armageddon, which would be his crowd.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you don't have enough of the information, and this information's been in a blackout for 70 years, you know, if you're David Fravor flying a F-18 chasing one of these things, and you're not read in, you're a jet pilot. You're not read into what's coming out of the underground facilities at Skunk Works out there in the desert.
Yeah.
So you're going to immediately think, oh, shit, I just saw an alien craft. No, you saw something that was made at the Skunk Works that was moving in a way with no visible means of propulsion.
I was just trying to